Welcome to the Inferno Cast, everybody. Today we have a special guest, Alberto Crane, who a lot of you guys may have heard of as BJJ black belt, MMA fighter. A lot of history, great stories. How's everything going today, Alberto?
Going great. Going great.
Yeah, you guys surviving okay?
Considering we have to close our schools and everything else, but all we can control is our mindset, right, and our attitude. So it's a big pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, no problem, man. It's going to be fun. We have a mutual friend. We actually have a couple. There's a few of them, but Mark Bradford kind of connected us because me and him go way back to his roots in Arkansas. And then Hanato was talking about stories of whenever he first moved to the U.S. and got to hang out and train with you. So a lot of connections.
Nice. How did you know Renato?
We met in Vegas or LA, one of the big tournaments. We ran into each other, just kind of hit it off, and we've been friends ever since for years now. It wasn't anything. It was just one of those chance things that's turned into a really good friendship. He's a really good guy.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going well. So what I wanted to talk to you about was, first, what was your initial introduction to martial arts? Like, how did you find martial arts? Was it as a kid, as a teenager? What did that kind of look like when you were younger?
When I grew up, I messed around a little bit with kickboxing, but I never really never really had a mentor. I grew up in Germany. I spent most of my childhood actually in Germany, and then I moved to New York City during high school. And I had some friends that did some kickboxing, and I would go to their houses and train there, but I never really fully got into it. I never really had a mentor per se, and so it wasn't until I was about 18 years old and I started jiu-jitsu that I kind of got fully immersed, and I was working at a restaurant right after high school, and some friends of mine were doing jiu-jitsu, and they invited me to come do class. It took them about a few months, and then one of my smaller friends, he got me to go, and he armbarred me like 10 times, and I just couldn't believe it. And so I was like, let's go again. And I never missed a class after that. And it kind of grabbed me. And that was kind of the beginning, of a lifelong journey.
Yeah, there's nothing like a little bit of humble pie.
One of my best friends, Amal Easton, like a Henzo Gracie black belt, he moved down to Brazil soon after, and he would tell me about Brazil, and we actually trained. He came back from Brazil, and we started training in his garage every single day, and he was showing me all these different techniques and these new techniques. And back in those days, this is like the mid '90s, right? That was non-existent, right? The only thing you could really get, there were a couple of the Machados, right, on in LA, and maybe the Gracie family, right, and a couple of their family members. And then there was VHS tapes,
that was it.
And so that was it, right? And so I was, and there weren't those techniques that he was learning in Brazil. So it was really a game changer, and that I was like, man, I want to go too, And I saved up all my money, I sold everything I had, and I ended up, moving out of Brazil. I was 18, and just went all in. And I wasn't all in yet, but I went there for, I had enough for 6 months, and I stayed there for 6 months. You could stay for 6 months you could stay there for 3 months and then renew your visa and stay there for another 3 months. And so that's basically what I did. And then I came back, and then they had the world championships. And so I went back again for that, it was maybe 2 months later. And my mom was like, what are you doing? Let's finish another semester of college. And then go there for a year, kind of like a year abroad. She did a year abroad when she was in college. And so I was like, okay, fine, And so I ended up, coming back, and then they started teaching, because there was nobody else, for me to keep training basically. And then I went down to Brazil for a year, but it ended up being over 3 years. I wasn't done yet, and I overstayed my visa. I stayed there longer. I was there illegal. I had to pay a fine and stuff. But I came back after a year, and then I stayed another year. I came back for just for Christmas and stuff like that. But I ended up staying there for over 3 years, and I wanted to be the best. I read a book called Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill, and I set my goals. And one of my goals was to be one of the best, and so I totally aligned myself with my goals, and that meant moving down to Brazil and training with the best, right, and learning from the best. At the time, everything was in Brazil. We had a big culture shock, and it was definitely very, very different. I didn't speak Portuguese when I first went down there, and so it was a big learning curve, and I got taken advantage of many, many times. And it was tough, it was tough. Like, what am I had a lot of days I'd wake up. I was in paradise. I would look out the door, out the window, and I was in paradise, but I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I had many days like that, and I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, and then I actually lost a lot too when I at the beginning, like because they basically didn't have any white belt tournaments, and so now you can get seasoned and like learn how to compete and stuff as a white belt. But back then it was just blue belts and not pretty much tournaments. And so I would compete against guys from Brazil that were pretty seasoned, and I was a tough guy, but like I would lose, so I lost for about 3 years. I think it was about 13 tournaments actually. Who knows, maybe it was more, I don't know, that's what I remember. But I lost for about 3 years, and it was very, very tough because it was a lot of money. I remember sleeping in airports. I remember I just put everything I had into to being the best, and it was very, very hard, very, very difficult coming back and just facing everybody and saying, yeah, I lost, I lost my first or second match, but I kept at it. And I kept, at the big tournaments like the Worlds and all the, really all the tournaments, I would stick around and I would watch all my opponents in the matches, and I started to see how the guys were winning and the tactics and how they were competing, how they were winning, and I started to like take notes, and I started to learn, and so after about 3 years, and I finally won my first tournament, and then I got a bronze medal at the Worlds in '98, well, I was at a world class level basically, and I took that all the way to black belt once I started winning. But I could have quit anytime. I mean, any time of those losses before that, in those 3 years. Because like, oh, I'm not good, I'm not this, that, but I just had a goal and I kept at it. I never gave up, and it's like you could say they're losses, right? And I could have taken the easy way and maybe given up, right? But I set a goal, and those 3 years of my life of losing, it was like the best, like the best, like blessing in disguise. It was like one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life.
Well, I mean,
Um,
most people grow more from their losses than they do their victories, which it seems like it's correlated almost to maybe how you were raised, because for somebody to be 18 years old, to be that focused on goals, to have that kind of family support, to go halfway around the country, across the globe, and then, where you don't speak the language, and for you to have your parents kind of support and see that and appreciate that, that seems unusual, so what was the family support structure like for that to be so normal for an 18-year-old kid to say, hey, I'm moving to another country for a while, thanks for the support?
yeah. Like when I was pretty young, right? And my mom they're all like teachers and educators, and they wanted me to finish college, right? And I promised her I would finish college, and like at first she didn't. She was like, "What are you doing?" I'd come back home with like all these like scabs on my chin, and from like just being tough, and like black eyes, and face would be all like beat up a little bit. And she's like, "What are you doing?" Like she didn't like believe in it. And then she kind of saw how focused I was, and how I started to change, like my physique, and just saw like I was really driven and focused. And I think she really liked that, and what's funny is she watched the choke documentary
Yeah.
with Hicks, right? Reason, yeah, for reason we watched it together one day, and after that, she's like, "All right, this is good for you. This is good. This is good stuff. And it resonated with her. It wasn't about fighting and hurting people, and she kind of got it. What it's about. And
Yeah.
and then that I don't know what it was, but then she's like, she helped me like go to that year abroad. But I went there and she helped me, but I racked up like I lived on credit cards and stuff. I had like I had paid 18 working at the restaurants. I really worked hard, but and I got some real estate, but I lived on credit cards, I had some credit, and I lived on my credit cards basically, and to stay the course, because I could have come back, but I was like, I'm not done yet, I'm not done yet. And so
Yeah.
I stayed on track, and then I was like, okay, it's time to go back, and then so I came back, and I was trying to decide where I was going to move to, and I just basically asked myself, like, where would you want to move? If there's any place in the world, like my family and just my roots are in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and so I said New Mexico, Santa Fe, and it's not a good city or a good town to kind of, but I followed my heart, and I ended up going back to Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's a town of 60,000. There's not a big university, and back in those days, right, the UFC, it was very underground, right? Not a lot of people knew what it was unless they watched those early UFCs. Some people knew, but nobody really knew what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was.
Yeah.
And so I came back, and I was trying to decide where I was going to go. I ended up deciding on Santa Fe, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? But I was basically educating people at those times with VHS tapes of like Gracie in action and the choke video. And I started them at that time, it's one of the first gym, actually, Jiu-Jitsu gym, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym in New Mexico, and one of the in the country, really, it was one of the, and it was cool because like, I'm in a small town in New Mexico, and it was one of the only like Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms, really, especially at
Yeah.
a high level. I had guys that came through, the who's who really, that came through while I was there, so they really got a lot, like this my first generation students, and I had some world champion, IBJJF world champions, and a bunch of medalists, and I had, like, I remember there's like picture of Draculino coming to visit us, and I think it was like in 2000 or 2001, and there's like 4 or 5 like UFC veterans in the picture, and it's pretty cool, it's pretty cool. Just
Yeah,
that original group.
Wouldn't Draculino, you're the guy you trained with in Brazil? Is that who you found as far as when you were down there training?
Exactly. He was my professor. Yeah. And yeah, that's who I decided to train with. Because at first I went to Rio de Janeiro. Yeah. And then I met him. And so I ended up moving to a city called Belo Horizonte is how they pronounce it. It's like the third largest city. It's like Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and then there's Belo Horizonte, And
Uh,
at the time, I went to Rio de Janeiro. There's the Gracie Obama, like their first American black belt, right? And it was the who's who, right? There was like so many black belt world champions training there at the time, and the technique and everything was like amazing, right? But I met this little guy named Draculino, and he's very well spoken and very like really really cared, and he was like hardcore. He was a small guy, but he resonated with me. And then when I went to visit his school, he was just starting it, really. It was his first year, and it was only like white belts and blue belts at the time. But I was like, I was like, I want to move here, and it ended up being a great decision because we had made a lot of history, and it was, had so many black belt world champions and just champions come out of there, UFC vets and all kinds of people, and so it ended up being like one of the best, good call, but I just followed my instinct, that it was the
well, I
right
mean,
place for
and
me.
there's
They made me feel like family, because in Rio de Janeiro, you had a lot of like foreigners and stuff trying to learn jiu-jitsu, but there, I felt like one of them, I felt like one of the team. I think
and
that was the case.
that's awesome that you were able to kind of find somebody with that kind of leadership and character, to kind of put you on the right path and help
Mm-hmm.
you feel a part of the team and push your personal standard. How much do you think his influence of your personal standard for performance influenced you versus what you kind of already had in you? Some people are instinctually like, I'm just going to go all the way. Like, do you feel like it was 50-50, or he really kind of pushed you over that line of what you could achieve, or where do you feel like that came from?
Like I think my family, I have some greatness, I think, in my family, my grandfather, my mom's dad, like he was blind. I was named after him. He was an attorney, like politician. It just, he's just, and all his like brothers and sisters, like they're all like super successful, like my mom's brother, they went to Stanford. Like they're all like, I think, like um, um, high achievers, Um, so um, so I think that's kind of, I think it's in me, right? But I definitely needed the right mentor to kind of to to take me to the promised land in the jiu-jitsu realm,
Yeah.
and he was the right guy because it wasn't just jiu-jitsu, it was like being a high performer in life, and so he really ingrained that in all of us, and we had okay, like there's black belt world champions, like world class competitors, right? But like everybody was really tough, because everybody kind of you treat everybody the same. Turn like excellence is all around you. Like you can't help it, but be want it like that,
Yeah.
right? To be like
It's
that.
that rising
So
tide raises all ships kind of thing,
that's
just
it. That's
when
it.
everybody's trying
You
to
know.
achieve greatness, like it just becomes infectious. And I think that that's whenever you start getting particular about, what voices you allow in, what influences do you allow kind of over
Right.
your life. And, so you move back to Santa Fe, New Mexico, you decide that's where the family is. I'm going to start a school. You get the momentum, and then you decide to start fighting MMA. Where did that drive come from?
Yeah, so I never thought I would fight MMA. I remember I did like a little article in the newspaper and stuff, and I never thought I would fight MMA. It was something, and just something in me was like, I want to test it out. I want to see if this stuff works. In a real situation. And then that year, the King of the Cage just happened to come to New Mexico. And King of the Cage back in those days, like in 2002, whatever, 2001, right? It was a big deal. It was like neck
Yeah.
and neck with UFC. They had
Yep.
pay-per-views. They were really competing with the UFC. They were trying to take over the they were trying to compete with the UFC, right? And
Yeah.
they were really. And so they came to New Mexico. I was training. I was friends with Greg Jackson. And he told me, and I was like, I'm interested in getting on the card, And then I called them up. They got me on the card. At first I was like more on like towards like the middle or undercard even, And then I went in there. I wasn't planning on, I just, the pay was like $200 or $300. I don't even know, something ridiculous, And then they're like, but you get commission on ticket sales, And so, but you have to buy your own tickets, So I got like $10,000 worth of like tickets, and I sold them all because it was my first time fighting, competing in New Mexico, and I sold them all out, and they put me right before Dan Severn's fight. He was the main event, after that. And then, of course, they
Dan
wanted
was
me to
like the
fight.
main event for like every MMA show
Right, right,
for
right,
10
right,
years.
right. Yeah. He was already old, but he was still in there. He was still in the mix, at that time. Um, anyway, like it was on fight, and then they wanted me to fight again, and I was like, well, man, can you guys pay me a little bit more? Because like it's like a joke, right? Almost.
Yeah.
But it's the opportunity, right, that you get actually a fight in the cage, and so they're like no, and then they ended up not doing that event because it wasn't on it, I think, and then because I was bringing a whole contingency, right, and then I was also cross training with Greg Jackson and the Jackson guys in New Mexico in Albuquerque. And so I was kind of like, I had like everybody, I had like all the whole state really. And so then they're like, okay, we'll give you a title shot if you do this next fight, And they knew I wanted to fight the champion at the time because when during my first event, my first fight, he was acting really like kind of cocky with me and arrogant. And so he rubbed me the wrong way. I'd committed myself to like being the best, and he acted real like just arrogant with me, and I was like, what the, who's this guy think he is? And I felt really insulted, and so they knew I was really motivated to fight him. I told the matchmaker and stuff right away, and so they knew that. So like, listen, if you do this next fight, we'll give you a title shot on pay-per-view. And I was like, sounds good, right? Sounds
I'm
good.
in. And
Yeah,
you're a
so
ticket seller, so
and so I did the second fight, and then of course I got the title shot, which was going to be like 2 months later, right? And so I did a camp, like I was training, living in Albuquerque too. Like I was not living there, but I would basically stay there, throughout the week, and we did all the stuff that you would see later on like a lot of the UFC unleashes and stuff, trying
yeah.
running up in the mountains and just a lot of stuff, yeah, I got the title shot, and they would spy on I fought this guy Javi Vasquez, he's like the kind of their poster boy too at the time, and he was supposed to fight in the UFC, and there weren't that many UFCs at the time, so he's a big deal. I just beat the Rumino Sato, who was the first lightweight champion, like superstar really, lightweight superstar, MMA superstar, and so he just went to Japan actually and beat him there. So he was actually like a really big deal at the time, top 10 ranked, And so then they gave me a title shot, and he's like, I'm just a jiu-jitsu guy, just really basically underestimating me and kind of in a way insulted me. And so I took it really personal, One, like I was representing New Mexico, and two, I was representing jiu-jitsu. And so he kind of in a way, in my mind at least, like he was insulting like all my friends and all my team and everybody
Yeah.
that ever like I ever whatever I did, And so I took it really personal, and I was gonna destroy him,
And I'm sure being
anyway,
a
like
young fighter, like didn't fan that flame at all when you're a younger
right,
guy
yeah. I
and
mean, yeah,
training,
he had no
like,
idea. He had no idea, and I had a good team, like Jackson's, like they had guys who were like spying on him and like recording him at at tournaments and his warm ups, just everything, So I was really prepared, watching tapes, and I was like straight up like he had no idea, and I was training like an animal, And I had a lot less experience than him. I think he had like maybe 10 fights or something like that, and it was only like my third fight, But I was fighting in New Mexico, and there's altitude there, a little bit. So
yeah.
I had a lot of things in my favor, and I trained my ass off. BJ Penn and Carluno, he had fought that same night,
Oh, okay. And then
and
you had the exciting fight because of all the
right,
jiu-jitsu and
and
everything.
so
So you
people,
actually
yeah,
got
so
more views.
more people watched actually that fight than the other one, and a lot
Yeah,
of
I
people were talking
remember
about
that
it too.
fight too of BJ and Caluno, like just because
Number
the
two,
155ers were the lightweights of that time,
right,
because they didn't have
right, right,
35s and 45s.
right,
So
right, right,
yeah, I can actually remember that fight, and that's funny because King of the Cage was very competitive with the UFC, like you were saying at that time. So
right,
I
right,
mean, being on those cards, man, like it was if you weren't on King of the Cage, like you weren't going to get on the UFC just yet. Like I
for
mean, it
sure, for
was
sure,
it was a big deal back then.
yeah,
So
yeah,
well, I
that's
mean,
it.
you had like what 20 MMA fights?
I did 20 MMA fights. Yep.
Man, that's a lot of fights. So, what does martial arts look for you like? What does it look like for you now? Like, is it much different? Is it just basically volume or training methodology? What's
Well,
kind of different now than what it was?
I'll tell you a little backstory. I was trying to get back to the UFC, and like every 5 years they make you do a brain MRI in California and Nevada. So the second time I went to get a brain MRI, they called me in the day before my weigh-in, and they said, "Hey, we need to discuss your brain MRI, right?"
Mm,
And it
okay.
wasn't like okay, I've never gotten a call like this. So I went in, and they're like, "Listen, we can't let you fight. This looks like multiple sclerosis." And it was kind of like just kind of numb in a way to what they told me, but you start to do like research, and you see people in wheelchairs after a few months and 6 months, and then they're like, well, like we need to do more tests to confirm, and so we did more tests, and it took about 3 to 4 months, and they're like, yeah, sorry, you have multiple sclerosis, and they basically treated me like my life was over, like everything that I had done, everything I'd worked hard for, and who I was basically over, like everything was done, and I need to look into like taking drugs and to maintain my decline,
Hmm.
and they gave me a stack of drug books and asked me like like look at this and let us know what you want, which one you want to take. And before I walked out, I asked the doctor, I was like, can I still do jujitsu? And he's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess you're not getting hit in the head. I was like, okay, cool. Can I compete? And he's like, yeah, cool. Yeah, I guess that's okay too, right? Because you're not getting hit in the head. So I was like, okay, cool. Sounds good. And, people were treating me like all the nurses and everybody were like, like I'm, like sorry, like I'm going to die basically, right? And I guess I didn't go there, but I was like, cool, I can still do something I love to do, right? And so I registered for a tournament and ended up going like on a world tour because I was like, what if I can't do jiu-jitsu in 6 months or a few months?
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen? So I totally went on a world tour. I went around the country. I went to Europe, even went to Amazon. I went like all over the world and just put my heart and soul into it, like competing, like I'm never gonna compete again. I put my heart and soul into it, and and the last one of the last stops was like the Nogi Worlds, and I got to go against Royal Teles, who was like always much heavier than me. It was a big deal. So he had just won the Nogi World adult division like two years before that against Felipe Pena. So it was like a big deal. So to me, in my mind, actually, it was like a legit world championship, but it was like in the Master 2 division, but it was legit, to me.
Hey, man,
He
it's
was on the
still
cover of the
solid
Jiu-Jitsu
jujitsu
mag,
though.
and
Like,
you know, no, man, and no, it was cool. It was nice. So I was excited. I worked out. And then one of my friends was doing a seminar in Spain, the south of Spain. I never got to go visit him when he lived there. So he's like, "Hey, you want to come and do a seminar?" I was like, "Sure." And there were a couple other tournaments in Europe that that week of, like there was one in Berlin that the next weekend after the Nogi Worlds, and then there was another one in Madrid, Spain. So it's like, "Hey, let's do that one too. I'll go. Let's do these tournaments." And so he ended up flaking on me, but I ended up doing them, and going to Berlin, and then I did a seminar. I just did some seminars that paid my way, and make a little money. And then I ended up, went to Berlin, and then ended up in Spain. And my last stop was Madrid, Spain. So this is like a long story just to kind of get to where I'm at in my life, But basically, I went to Madrid, Spain, and it was my third weekend in a row competing. And I usually do like the gi, the no gi, and the open weights and all that. And so I couldn't eat like the night before. I wasn't really feeling good. And I just thought it was like fatigue from, competing and stuff and traveling all this time. And I wasn't doing well, like physically, but I would be a wreck, I would be doing well, like mentally, physically. Anyway, so I finally up in Madrid the night before the tournament. I'm not feeling good. The next morning I still can't eat. I'm still not feeling good. And I feel kind of bloated, And then I go into the tournament in the bullpen. I meet my first match. We start to talk. We become friends. We go. We compete. He drops his weight. I do my move, but he drops his weight on my stomach. And then I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna throw up. And so I hold it in. I end up losing the match. I don't know what. But I remember securing like the throw up. I was done with the match. I threw up like crazy, like, and let it all out. I had food poisoning basically. And so I was like a ghost, like totally pale, and like three guys in the bracket, right? And so like, you want to go again? I'm like, yeah, let's go, and getting like choked out unconscious. And that next match, and I remember just being like super defeated mentally and everything else. And the guy I went against first, he's like, "Hey man, you gonna do the open weight?" And I'm like, "Nah, man, I'm done." He's like, "Why? Just push your name. Maybe you'll feel better later in the day." And so I was like, "Okay, I'll put my name down." And so I did, and I was like, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, because I was like, "What am I gonna do? Feel sorry for myself at the hotel, or feel sorry for myself here, right?" So anyway, I stayed at the tournament and I registered. I put my name in there, and because I qualified, I still medaled, even though I got like third place out of three people. And hold on 1 second here. And so then I started the open weight, and I had like 2 hours before the matches, or for the match. My first match, could have lost the first one, but I started like kind of just like I started saying to myself, I believe in my technique. I believe in my technique. And that just a couple hours, there's like a little mantra, and I remember like it gave me like energy, because I was so weak. I couldn't drink, I couldn't eat, I didn't feel good. I felt, like the flu, I was so I have a couple hours of the mantra in my head, and then I end up going in there and winning my first match. Winning the second match. There was like a really big guy in one of the matches, and then I ended up winning like my third, and I ended up winning the whole thing. And I was so weak, man. I was so weak. I had no strength. I just had nothing except for a mindset. And I kept saying that little mantra, like, I believe my technique. And I really believed in my technique. I really believe my technique. I really believe my capability. But just the fact that I kept saying and really believed in it with my heart and soul and everything I was. And the biggest highlight in my career, man. Like, and I've been doing like the Nogi World, the Nogi division after that too. But just really showed me like what my mind is capable of. And so like myself, after that, I was like, the whole MS, multiple sclerosis, like I was like, I got this, in my mind, like I got this, I can win, Like after seeing what my mind is capable of through that day, for whatever reason, I just knew I had it. And my subconscious took me to this thing called TacFit, Tactical Fitness, TacFit. It was a system that created by C fights back in 2008, 2007. And so I wasn't really ready for him, but one of the things that he showed me, one of the things that really stuck with me, is I got thrown on my head, and he showed me some movements. And instead of having to take like 4 to 6 weeks and take dry pain pills and things like that, I was able to heal myself. And then also at 4 to 6 weeks, you can never really feeling the same like you were, right? But I was able to heal myself within a week, and it had such a big impact on me that I always wanted to learn more and get into it, but there was nobody really to kind of show me, and I would go to the website and wasn't really like I didn't really trust, you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
like I circle back after that, you know, after that ordeal in Madrid. It wasn't a big, like a major tournament, right? But like it meant, like personally for me, like so much because of it showed me, you know, what I'm capable of. And so after that, I went to his certification, and then I ended up like, okay, I got a second chance to really learn these things, you know. And then with every certification, every workshop, and they're kind of hardcore. It was like very, very hard. I was in a lot of pain, like every joint in my body. It was almost impossible for me to put the seatbelt on in my car because I was just so stiff, you know, and a lot of pain, right? And everything wasn't working, right? And so then every workshop I did, every certification, I started to kind of feel better and better and better. And some things all my joints, like the pain started to go away, and I started to feel it better from the inside out. I felt myself healing. I hadn't dreamt for like 10 years, and I started to be able to dream again, and I just knew stuff was happening, so I just kept pushing, you know, and I started to feel myself healing, truly healing, and kind of giving me my life back, that I felt like it was being taken away from me. You know, year after year, I went on a world tour with it again, you know, just really trying to immerse myself in it, you know, like the same thing I did in jiu-jitsu. I feel like jiu-jitsu gave me the mindset, but the TacFit was the right stuff, you know, for me to kind of figure it out, you know, and heal myself.
So so if I say like mind over matter, like what does that mean for you? Because, you know, you get diagnosed with the MS, basically everybody gives you a death sentence, you know, they treat you different, they look at you different, which is hard not to internalize. And then you go out and you do this physical run of the tournament circuit, and then you have a moment in which you prove to yourself what you're really made of. And then you find this system, this support structure of TacFit that gives you more like actual tools to rebuild yourself as an individual. So when you hear the terminology mind over matter, how can you articulate that to somebody that hasn't been
Well,
through what you've been through?
let's look at an atom, right? And there's a mass, right? There's a or you know, it's the nucleus at the center, right? Which is like mass, right?
Mhm.
And so that's 0.0000, I don't know how many zeros, one, right? And point nine, and we're 0.9999999, like energy, right? We're mainly energy. We're mainly space. We're mainly
Okay.
energy. And so when you say mind over matter, do our thoughts matter? Yes, we are thoughts. We are thoughts. We are energy. And so you know, your thoughts become matter, you know, like, I mean, you start to study like brain neuroscience and those kinds of things. Your thoughts become matter, and those layers get laid down, you know, whether it be positive or whether it be negative, you know. And so mind over matter is real, you know. And as a martial artist, it's very, very true, because we push ourselves beyond what we're capable of physically, and we destroy our bodies, you know. And that's another reason why I love TACFA so much, because it really teaches you how to balance everything for you to reach be your best, you know, for whatever tournament or goal you have, but also for life, you know. It gives you all the tools that you need. um but like mind over matter, it's not just, it's real, you know. Mind over matter, yeah. We are mainly mind energy. We're energy, you know. So what you think is energy, you know, whether it be positive or negative. So your your thoughts matter, and you know, protect your mindset, protect your thoughts, you know, because it matters, you know. It's everything.
So
That's what I would say.
if you were going to advise somebody that had a very low comprehension of this idea, you know, had a confidence problem, you know, couldn't quite believe in themselves, kind of one of those like, well, I got to see it to believe it. What would be like the first 2 or 3 steps that you would tell somebody to get control of their destiny and their perspective like that?
What's this saying, like show me your friends and I'll show you your future, you know.
Okay.
So okay, if you don't have the friends, get rid of any friends that you have that aren't getting you in those directions. They're getting you in the right mindset and getting you what you want in your life. You know, if you want to be success, get rid of anybody that doesn't help you get there, and read books, and watch podcasts, listen to podcasts, like YouTube things that are in line with what you want, if not, find some new friends that are going to help you. Surround yourself with like-minded or people that you want, like you want to be like, you want to emulate, That's what I say, because those people are going to influence you and you're going to become like them,
Yeah.
right? And
Goes
that
all
can
the way
be
back to
good
your
or that
Brazil
can be
trip.
bad. Yeah, so that can be good or that can be bad. So depending on what you want, if you want to be a loser and you don't want to do anything in your life, hang out with losers, If you want to be a winner and if you want to be a success, hang out with successful people and hang out with people that are going to get you where you're going to be. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
simple, and those people who rub off on you, you become them, and they become you. So that's what I say. Like I said, surround yourself. If you don't have those people, get rid of the people that aren't going to help you, and that's even family, until
Yeah.
you're where you want to be, and then you can circle back, and then they can like, yeah, like you can. Everybody's like, yeah, he's my hero, you're my hero, but I think though that's what I say, surround yourself with the right people. Like your friends can make you or break you. Like, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. So
So
that's straight
from
up.
so basically, manage your external influence would be your first thing. And that brings me to another question. So since you've had, you know, a doctor try to tell you what your future looked like and what it could possibly be, how do you manage, listening to your body versus what you can push your body to do? Because I'm sure there's got to be a little bit of both. Like, you got to be aware of what's happening, but not to the point of like paranoia of like, oh, am I sick? Is there something wrong with me? How do you manage that physically when you know when to keep pushing versus when you know that you need to pull back a little?
Like some things that I had with MS, like I had numbness in different parts of my body, fatigue. I'd be want to stay in bed all day. I would go in and teach and train whatever I could train, and then I would be like in bed the rest of the day. I even kind of like was losing like control, like like my bowels and stuff. Like it's embarrassing to say that, but that was reality. There were a lot of things, but I think. I think like I just never accepted it, I was just too stubborn, I just never accepted it, like when you start to accept like I'm a victim, this is what's gonna happen to me. I never really accepted it. Um, I don't my family for sure, like being tough, but I feel like it's I owe it to jiu-jitsu, just the mindset that it gave me, like my professor, I told him at the world, I think it was like the world, one of the big major tournaments, we had a long talk, but it's from like being on the mats, moving to Brazil, and it's that mindset that was really like ingrained in me, forged in me. Like the losses and all those things that just made me like just so resilient and so tough that I think I never really accepted some doctor, some supposed expert on how my life's gonna be. Like, how dare anybody say my life is over and it's only downhill from here? Like, how dare anybody say that?
Yeah,
It's up to me. It's up to me. And I think that's the truth for everybody. It's up to you. No
yeah, I
excuses,
like
no
that.
blaming others. It's up to you. It's up to you. You decide what you want to be. I mean, MS, whatever it is, whatever position you're in. I think, I think it's up to us at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I like that, man, because people sometimes they give away their power so easily,
Hmm.
to like if they're in somebody in a relationship with or to a medical professional or a legal professional, like, there's people that you need to listen to. They're educated in certain areas, but when you give away your power, to where you just kind of accept your plight that somebody else has chosen or dictated for you, that's the tragedy. And it's,
Well,
so how do
it's tough, right? It's tough, right? Because you doctors, they're the experts, right? And you have to trust the doctor. Doctor's a doctor. You gotta do what they say. But man, like, thank God for podcasts. Thank God for like information out there, because that's not the case, man. It's just like because you have a black belt in jiu-jitsu doesn't necessarily know like that mean that you're really an expert,
yeah.
Like who did you get your black belt from? What are your qualifications? Like you have to look at all these things. Not just that, but like just the way the system is. Like who is this doctor? Like, what has he done? You know, just because he has a degree doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. You know, just because he has a piece of paper. So, you know, and a lot of these guys aren't up to date. You know, like I've been really, really studying like neuroscience, and just I try to study as much as I can. You know, just because of the situation, and I want to try to understand what happened. You know, what's happening, and so it's given me like a deeper knowledge of
Yeah.
self. You know, and a lot of these things like, you know, like things like fascia and the neuroscience, you really have to be up to date. It's really the last like 5 years, man. The script is flipped, you know, and so things
Yeah.
that were around 5 years ago aren't the case now. You know, it's not the same thing. I mean, that's why like all the old school dentists and doctors, like they were the best doctors because they were like generalists. You know, they knew a little bit about everything, and so how they all
Yeah.
work together. But now everybody's like a specialist, and that's not the case. Everything works together, right, for the whole. And so because people only know like a little bit about, like one thing, they forget about the other parts, right, that make everything work. So it's just an interesting situation, right, that we're in. And just also like, like the drugs and the pharmaceuticals, and you it's a business, right? It's a business, and
Yeah.
like surgery and drugs is like the best, easiest way for the doctors to, get people through it. And man, I don't want to blame the doctors. There's some good doctors, man. You know, it's just the system, right? It's the system, the way everything is.
Well, so I've heard it, I've heard it talked about like perspective bias, and you can almost put it into a martial arts sense where if you go ask, a strict BJJ guy, what do you do in this position? That answer may not be valid if you change the format where like you go into a position where it's like, oh, I was on the pavement and there's three other guys, there was a weapon involved, like,
Right,
but in that moment, at that time, that guy being an expert answered it to the best of his ability. Just like if you
right,
ask a boxer what to do off of the jab, and then
right,
it's like we change the conditions. It's like, oh, well, the guy's a wrestler too. And it's like,
hmm,
oh, well, that changes the whole thing where
right,
it's not their intention. It's not really a lack of education. Just it's
right.
perspective bias. Everybody sees the world from their view. And sometimes that view doesn't answer all the fallacies or the possibilities because you take anything on this planet, there's always a 1% anomaly that exists with anything. And when you kind
Right.
of look at life like, man, I live in the 1%, like the bullseye is my globe,
Mm,
that's all you need. When they give you 1%, you're like, I'm good. Man, I'm good. You got
yeah.
1%, I'm fine. And I really
Hmm.
feel like that's, resounding with you because just your assurance and confidence, just like when you went to Brazil and you knew what you wanted to achieve and what you're putting in your brain at an early age, and
Mm,
how you coped with all these challenges and struggles, man, like you're a solution finder. You
hmm.
don't put yourself in a circumstance or into a box where, well, this is what it is, like it's find a way no matter what. And I feel like that's the real martial attitude. That is what the martial arts gives people for a lifetime when they're trying to chase belts or championships or, things that are fun, that are important, but the overall journey is about something so much more, which is what you're describing is like, man, it's your family, it's your health, relationships, pushing your full potential as far as you
That's it.
possibly can, you
That's
know?
it.
That's awesome,
That's it.
man. Well, I appreciate you, taking some time to talk with me tonight. I know you're slam busy with everything. I really love the story. I think people are going to really resonate with this. Is there anything you want to finish off with to tell everybody?
Yeah, like where I'm in Los Angeles and Burbank, California. If you're around the area, feel free to visit me. Legacy BJJ.
Yeah,
TacFit is the system that really saved my life. So I really believe in it. Not just
yeah,
for of course for jiu-jitsu. I'm totally biased that if you do jiu-jitsu, you should have that as part of your training.
yeah.
But also like other people as well. But TacFit.com, definitely check them out. And
Man, I will.
yeah, and be a part of that too. I really recommend that. But yeah, that's it. Big pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for reaching out. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. We'll definitely be staying in touch. I appreciate everything, and we'll be talking soon. And I hope everybody enjoyed the cast.